Welcome to the E-commerce Profits Podcast, where we feature top founders and experts in the e-commerce industry and take an in-depth look at the struggles and successes in growing e-commerce brands profitably.
All right, Josh Chin here. I'm the host of the E-commerce Profits Podcast, where we feature top experts, founders in the e-com industry. We go behind the scenes of the struggles and successes in growing a brand. Now, this episode is brought to you by Chronos.agency. If you run a direct-to-consumer e-commerce brand that is ready to scale and to double your customer lifetime value through lifecycle marketing, Chronos is your company. We've helped hundreds of brands scale profits with email, SMS, and mobile push marketing while getting an average of 3,500% ROI from our efforts. We've worked with brands like Truly Beauty, The Udi, Dr. Living Good, and many more. Now, the next step is to email us at sales@chronos.agency, or you can go to chronos.agency to learn more. Today's guest is David Morneau, the managing partner, co-founder at inbeat.agency, which specializes in helping brands drive sales, create content, and build awareness through micro-influencers on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. David, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Josh, for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Now, let's dive into it. How do you get started in the agency world and specifically in micro-influencers, the micro-influencer niche?
Yeah, that's a good question. So essentially, we were tuned back 5 years ago. We were an SEO agency building backlinks, doing a lot of outreach on that front. Client tells us in the direct-to-consumer segment, tells us, hey, we'd like to run some influencer outreach. We'd like to get some content from these micro-influencers. Is that something you could help with? Turns out we start doing the outreach. We start, getting influencers onboarded. We realize, oh, crap, there's a service here that we can build. And that's where we took it off. We built a software which, helps us discover influencers. And we built our service arm through the years. And here we are now today. Selling influencer marketing, more specifically micro-influencer marketing to hundreds of, brands across the board. So yeah, that's the story.
It's incredible. Now, tell me a little bit more about micro-influencers versus just influencers, plainly. Why micro-influencers specifically?
A couple of reasons. The sales cycles are usually much shorter in the sense that, they're not represented by agents, so they can make a decision in a finger snap. It's extremely easy to manage these relationships. They are cheaper, so you get more content assets per your budget. And they are extremely engaged with their audience if you do the selection right. So that's really why we focus on micro-influencers. The one of the biggest factors is probably just the price per collaboration is much lower and it's much easier to deploy the content. There are some drawbacks though. They are quite hard to manage in many cases where this is not a full-time job they're doing. This is not their business. So they can ghost you. You need to follow up, make sure you have the right systems in place. But yeah, that's why we love micro-influencers.
Incredible. So for someone who's brand new to influencer marketing, or a brand who has never done it before, what's the first couple of steps that they should take?
I mean, the first couple of steps is really just looking in your follower, like who's interacting with you, with your brand. Do you have any influencers in your customer base, right? That's the first question you should be asking yourself. And an influencer from us is a really loose term in the sense that we're talking a couple thousand followers to 25,000 followers on Instagram, and on TikTok, we bump up that follower count, just because people have more followers on TikTok. So we're talking about 50,000 to 250,000 kind of followers on TikTok is what we consider micro influencers. You can vary that definition based on what you see, but yeah. So look in your follower base, who's interacting with your brand, what do you have, and reach out to them. Maybe they'll create content for you, post it to their social media. If that works out decently, roll out an affiliate program if you don't have one and take it from there.
So on TikTok, that's 50 to 250K followers, and Instagram, that's, what was that, 5 to 40?
Yeah, 5 to 25 is what we look at. We'll bump that up if a brand has a lot of goodwill or, they're standing for like some kind of mission that people care about, then we can bump that up and still get good prices in the higher ranges.
Gotcha. And we spoke a little bit about this before we could record, but the use cases in influencer marketing, specifically with micro influencers. We talked about the three major use cases here. Let's dive into them. Number one, I think top of mind, content creation. I was reading the case study that you created with Phone Loop,
Yeah.
that generated 80% more on their ROAS.
Yeah.
That's crazy. And you were telling me that that stemmed from just having a lot more assets that their media buying team could use. What's that process look like?
So when you look at it, like media buying is a lot about testing different creatives. That's probably the portion you have the most control on when you're media buying, where versus, audience targeting has become less and less relevant as Facebook's, big data algorithms
More
are
so
just
now.
becoming better.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So the targeting is much less of a component to play with. Having said that, having a lot of creative assets to test, different USPs is probably what makes or break your strategy. So having, an engine of 50 plus creators creating content on a regular basis to power your paid media engine is really a good way to go. So essentially what we do is we research competitors in the Facebook ads library, see what kind of ads are they running? What's the content they're using, et cetera. Create mood boards around that, ship that out to creators, have them create content around those mood boards. Some content come back, it's not good, it's garbage. Some content come back, it's completely amazing. So it's really a numbers game. Add that content to a Google Drive folder, share that with the paid media team, and let them run their ads with it. So that's essentially the whole process behind that.
That sounds like a lot of work.
Yeah, well, I mean, decently, right? But it's just like once you systemize it, it's not that much work, right? If you have the right person, you need a person dealing with all these relationships. And once you set up the system, then when you have your go-to creators that are good at creating content for you, that are reliable, then it becomes like an engine. You essentially outsourced your creative department to, a small army of creators, which is an extremely powerful asset for any direct-to-consumer brand to have.
Huge. And I was, so we're in the space as well. And when it comes down to product testing, UGC ads are incredibly important. Like on top of like just the regular product ads, right? UGC ads create the results that we just don't see otherwise. Um, how do you think about the value of these assets, and how much should brands be spending in creating these assets investment wise? Is there a number or ROI that you think about?
So, I mean, like a lot of the brands we work with are probably like spending north of $10,000 a month in terms of like creating tons and tons of assets, right? But it all depends on the scale of like your paid media budget. I wouldn't put content creation much beyond 10% of their media buy budget. So, if you're not spending enough, then you should just work with a couple small creators and get them to create content. You won't get the full benefit anyway from testing, hundreds of variations if you don't have the budget to back that up. So that's how I would think of it. In terms of how much a video asset or an image should cost you, it really depends. What I recommend doing is pitching more than enough influencer micro creators, however you want to call them, and just get their rates, right? Negotiate them, get their rates, include that in a spreadsheet. And then after that, evaluate them like content quality, price. Okay, cool. We've got this influencer that's creating a video for $100 versus this one that wants to charge us $700, right? So it's really about like gauging properly, like, okay, well, what's the cost per asset? And if you reach out to tons of creators, then it becomes extremely easy to get better prices. And a good way that we capitalize on creating content on the more cost-effective way is really to just have one creator create multiple assets, so we can give them more money for more assets, but we don't need to pay as much per asset. So yeah.
That makes sense. Do you start the conversation with a price in mind, or do you let the conversation take where it may?
Yeah, we do usually start with the price in mind, just to anchor like our price, get rid of the people that are thinking of charging way too much. They're going to be, well, this is completely out of my budget. Here's my media kit. Well, I appreciate your business. Thank you for taking the time. And then some people will be like, well, look, you're offering me, let's say $250, but my regular budget is $500. Well, we'll say, okay, well, what we can do is we can ask for 3 videos. We want 3 videos. Here's the concepts we want, and we're willing to pay $800. And then they're like, okay, well, that's fair, or no, that's not, and so forth, right? Just the typical negotiation process. that we build
Yeah.
the list. And what we tell the influencers, because we work on behalf of clients, is like, well, we'll come back and we'll get your profile in front of the client with your rates. So that's essentially how we work it.
I'm curious. As an agency, you naturally get a little bit of an edge in these relationships with these influencers. Once you've built a relationship that's existing with David or with inbeat.agency, um, does it become easier for that negotiation and the conversation to happen again for another
Yeah,
brand, for example?
definitely does. It definitely does, especially if there's overlap between influencers. It definitely becomes
Yeah.
so much easier, right? Because we know like how we evaluate creators on a long-term basis is ease of communication, reliability, and content quality, right? And it's really in that order, right? It's got to be easy to communicate with them. They've got to be reliable. If they say we're going to create 3 videos by the end of next week, we need those 3 videos by the end of next week, because we turn around and we tell the client, well, we'll have those videos by end of next week. So they need to be reliable and their content quality, right? And if we have these 3 things, then, if you match these 3 things as a creator, we're going to add you to our little special database so that we can re-collaborate with you for other clients as we go along.
So you do have an internal tiering system of people that you prefer to work with. That's so valuable. Yeah, that's going to save so much time. So
Exactly.
that's the first use case in content creation. I guess it's pretty similar, but the outcome is going to be a little bit different. The second use case being follower growth. And we've had a couple of conversations with some of our clients in, especially now with iOS 14.5 and iOS 15 coming out, having that organic community and reach is even more important than ever before. There is also some spillover effect to media buying and paid ads. What's that strategy behind follower growth?
So follower growths, you'll usually structure them around using a contest. So the influencers will be posting a contest to their page, and they have to follow brand's page and so forth. One of the pitfalls of this kind of strategy to grow followers is that your offering has to be something that the influencer's audience cares about, right? And that's really important in the sense that with phone loops, for instance, that's really hard because it's only a phone strap, right? It's not like it's really good on the impulse buying side, but it's not as good to run that strategy in terms of follower growth, right? But if we imagine a fashion brand, that people love, then it becomes extremely easy to run a giveaway on these influencers pages. Say, go and follow this page, and people will follow, will gladly participate in that. The value is higher. We're talking a couple hundreds of dollars worth of product, and it becomes really easy. Additionally, on top of that strategy, you can, use this influencer's content and run ads on top of it. And then, you run ads, the follower gets more participants, pardon me, and you can just get more participants or more followers. So you can run ads, see, okay, well, what's the cost of me getting more followers? And as this grows, then it can gain a certain traction and get you a lot more followers.
Is there a way to think about ROI or the value or cost per follower?
It's so brand dependent in the sense that the followers are usually more of a, because a lot of these followers are like a lot of these followers won't be caring as much for your brand, but some of them will just care very deeply, build a relationship with the brand. A lot of brands are looking to get followers because a decent brand wants to have a decent number of following, and they're looking into that, and they don't want to buy fake followers. So that's really why they look into like, okay, how can we build some organic following? So the value really depends on what your business objectives are. But the truth is that as a brand, you're going to get less and less organic reach as you grow, right? It's just these platforms are in the game of selling ads. So they're going to
100%.
cut your organic reach as we go along. This having more followers is just really a function of like, okay, well, we want to look legit. And that's pretty much like what you're going to get out of that. And of course, it's going to keep your organic fans engaged and so forth. But that's how I would look at it.
That makes sense. And number 3, I guess this is what people think of first. At least I do. It's just direct sales, straight up promo codes, and influencers driving sales.
So this works amazingly well if your product has, well, a couple things, right? It will be harder if your product is more of a higher kind of price point. We're talking mid couple $100 and beyond. Becomes really harder. Works really well for impulse buys, right? We're talking anything under
Yeah.
$50. If you can display some kind of unique selling proposition, make sure that the influencer conveys it through their content creation. So you could imagine, right? There's case companies that are doing this with like, a case drop kind of challenge, right? Well, amazing way
Mm.
to convey like, oh, this is amazing, right? Drop your phone, and then you have to tell the influencer like, drop it, and if you break it, we'll pay it, and so forth. Right? There's some things you need to figure out there, but essentially,
Mm.
like that's a really good way to convey an amazing product offering, right? And then after that, case can be an impulse buy, right? So it really works well. And
Yeah.
you give a discount code that's available for create some urgency in there, available for the first 25 purchasers and limit it to that. And that's really
Yeah.
what you're looking at in terms of you want to create a funnel like that. And you have to think about it more of a media buy perspective rather than
Hmm.
just like a collaboration for content, meaning that you have to be really careful that the influencer's audience match with who you're looking to target, right? And we had this chat before going live on this podcast, but essentially, a yoga influencer, female 25 to 34 can skew towards a male audience for obvious reasons, right? And that's
Yeah.
even if you're promoting a product that's geared towards women of that age, well, maybe that's not going to be a good way to distribute that product. So you have to be really conscious of like, what is the influencer's audience? And that can be in terms of age, in terms of demographics, where they're located. Like if you don't ship to Canada, but the influencer's audience is 40 something percent in Canada, well, you're losing out heavily on that distribution. So what we do is in the onboarding form, we ask the influencers like, hey, please share with us a screenshot of your audience metrics. Here's a quick video on how to
Mm.
do it. They screenshot and then upload the videos to the form. And we have that so we can say, okay, well, their audience is in the United States, 15 to 24. They're like, 18 to 24 and so forth. So really more about like you would run a paid media ad, right? What's the
Yeah.
USP we're putting forward and what's the audience we're targeting? And it's hard to run it with, products on the more expensive side where, YouTube will shine much more.
Makes sense. And when it comes down to the economics of things, what's the deal with the influencer? Is it a cost per sale, or is it kind of an upfront thing for doing that?
So really many ways to see it. Of course, they're going to get free product. You can get them an affiliate link as well, or an affiliate kind
Mm.
of payout. If people use their promo code, they make XYZ.
Yeah.
That's really good. Especially like you can probably run it in two ways. Like the way you can imagine it is, well, look, we'll pay you like a very small amount, give you free product, and if this performs, we'll send you an affiliate link and more product for you to participate in our network on a more long term basis. So first collaboration, we pay a small fee up front. We give you the free product. And after that, if this works out and we see you drove X amount of sales, say we're like, okay, influencer drives 10 sales. That's a good return on our media budget. Okay, cool. So we're going to send them an affiliate link, pay them out an affiliate kind of sign up that we pay them out X amount per sale, and we can take it from there.
Interesting. How do you? This sounds just it makes sense. Like from a if ROI makes sense, just scale this program up.
Yeah.
But at a certain point, it breaks. In my mind, because it's so manpower oriented. It requires someone to maintain relationships with multiple influencers, and as you scale a
Oh,
program going hundreds of influencers, what do you do then?
yeah. So exactly. So at some point you're going to need a program manager, right? An affiliate manager, whatever, however you want to
Yeah.
call them. Like you're going to need someone that their job is like, to have an email kind of outreach, an email kind of segmentation tool. And like, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
okay, let's send a special promotion for our top performers, right? And let's send this for people that haven't posted in X amount of time. You're going to have someone thinking strategically about how do you activate this program, right?
Yeah.
That's a fact. It's not like Facebook ads where you can just have one person scale to,
We'll
100,
spend more and more.
100,000. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's just, it doesn't work like that. There's still relationships in there. Having said that, it's a very powerful channel for the brands that crack that nut.
What do you do when an influencer outgrows the brand, or goes beyond that 25K threshold or 40K followers threshold?
It's
Does
an
that ever happen?
it's an interesting phenomenon. Yeah, it happens all the time, right? Because I mean, if they're creating good content, then it's a matter of time till they break that kind
Yeah.
of 25K barrier. And then at that point, right, some people are just super grateful that we had them ever since they had like 5K followers. So they're like kind of like
Mm-hmm.
they kind of like have an emotional tie to the brand. But yeah, some people will say, "Hey, look, I've increased my rates. Here's why." And then it's like, okay, well, let's look at the deal and see if we can have something that makes sense. And
Interesting. Have you ever phased out influencers purely because they've grown too big and the rates just don't make sense anymore for the returns that
oh
they're
yeah,
generating?
probably 100%. Yeah. That's for sure. That's for sure. I could ask our influencer managers, but I'm 100% sure that this happens more than we would wish for, right? But that's part of the game.
100%. What, so if I were running a brand and I came to your agency, what would my experience be like? What's the process?
So the way we work is that we identify kind of like your business goals, like, okay, what are you looking to do, right? And then like it's either you're looking to drive sales, you're looking to onboard kind of like, and then that can take many forms, right? We're looking to build an ambassador program, we're looking to build an affiliate program, we're looking to just do one-offs with a lot of influencers and so forth, right? So we identify that goal. Maybe it's creating content, or maybe you could even say, hey, we're looking to get some market insights. We actually have some
Hmm.
clients that are like, hey, we want to run a focus group with micro influencers. Here's the targeting, and we want to get them on a focus group. Quite interesting service offering, but yeah,
Hmm.
it definitely pans out. And then after we've identified your needs, what we do is we have a discovery team and an influencer management team and a customer success manager. So essentially that's what our kind of team structure looks like. We find influencers either in our network or outside our network. We onboard them, we show them to you, you accept or reject them. The ones that accept, we have them sign an agreement. We create a creative brief / strategy. We send that to them. We have them create content. You ship the product, and then
Mm-hmm.
you ship the product. Then we have them create content. And then after that, you approve or reject the content. That's optional. Some clients don't really care about approving or rejecting the content, but that's our process in a nutshell. So essentially, as the client, you have to be involved in the accept and reject phase of like the influencer vetting. So does this influencer match my brand? Yes or no?
Yeah.
If you reject them, why do you reject them? So that we can
Learn from that
share the
process.
feedback with the exactly, share the feedback with the discovery team and make sure that
Yeah.
everything works out.
That was my biggest concern or question. If I had to do that all the time with my agency, um, it's like I might as well kind of just build a team of my own if I'm going to be spending that much time. But it sounds like you're learning the brand along the way and what
Oh yeah.
fits in with the identity of the brand.
And I'm pretty sure you see the same thing with email marketing, right? As a service where,
Yep.
you get the brand, you get the comms approved by the clients and your team learns, okay, this is
Mm-hmm.
how the brand talks about this. They don't like to use the word free. They want to, there's tons of little
Yeah.
subtleties that you just learn about these brands and make sure that this kind of lives inside the team so that we actually don't make the same discovery mistakes, right? Because it can
Yeah.
get frustrating for the client to reject the same type of influencer multiple times for the same reason. It's like, okay, well, I'm wasting my time here. This process doesn't usually take that long though, because you're just running through the list and
Mm, makes sense. What are some brands that you personally look up to that you feel does a great job with their influencer strategy?
so there's two brands that I really love. Just in terms of direct to consumer brands, Care of is definitely one of those brands that
Mm.
I just absolutely love. I've studied them probably a little too much, but I just love their approach. They've got a kind of like a quiz based approach where it's like, hey, take this quiz and we'll recommend you what you need in terms of daily supplementation. Their ambassador program pages are spot on. Like, if you invite me to that, like it's gonna tell like, hey, Josh has invited you to Care of, right? And it's just super great kind of user onboarding. Their call to action is extremely simple. I really love Care of on that front. They're really crushing it on many fronts. And on the other side, there's Not Pot that I think is just the most genius kind of CBD gummy brand out there. To be honest, it's like such a cliche industry where I don't know, like it probably happens to you. We get a lot of CBD brands that approach us, right? A lot of CBD brands, probably more like dog CBD, like there's so many CBD brands, but I feel like Not Pot just cracked that. Like they just understood how to position it, right? And they have this table on their website where they compare gas station CBD to gummies to their CBD gummies, and the side by side comparison is absolutely genius. I love that brand. Yeah.
Oh man, care off. That's takecareoff.com.
Yeah, exactly.
And notpod.com. That's crazy.
Both.
We were talking about this. I think Care Off was acquired.
Yeah, by Bayer's, right? Yeah, which makes sense. It completely makes sense, right? They absolutely crushed the direct to consumer experience. Bayer's needs, it's just a good acquisition for them.
Crazy. How much, and like as far as valuations go, I think that's public, right? Like 200 over mil, you mentioned.
Yeah, over 200 million is the acquisition price. It was a good acquisition.
That is crazy. And I think that's cheap. But how much of content do you think plays into the valuation of the brand? How much does content play a part in that?
I mean, if you look at their ads at Care of, like it's crazy. Like they've crushed their ambassador onboarding. Their ads are extremely user generated, content centric. Like essentially, these UGC content assets is a huge part of their strategy. It's enormous, right? If you look at the number of times they're tagged, and by the way, like their product is extremely Instagrammable in the sense that you receive it and there's your name on it, right? It's super personalized. Kind of like Function of Beauty, which is another one of these brands that's hyper personalized. But these hyper personalized brands make for such a good Instagrammable experience for these influencers to share, right? And then their affiliate link or ambassador link, however you want to call it, directs to a landing page that has their name on it. So it's just extremely personalized from A to Z. And it's an enormous part of their strategy.
So it's pretty interesting the way that they have positioned themselves. And I would imagine that at a certain point in time, as a like such a huge successful brand, you might make that switch away from UGC, and becoming a little more. Right. You get what I'm saying? And why doesn't that happen in this case?
I mean, they're gonna be creating studio quality content as well to throw in there, right? It's gonna be part of their mix, but it's so relatable. Like that's what you lose in an ad, right? We have ad blindness where we know how to recognize an ad, right? And it's just like when you have like a video that's grainy, not as high quality, feels like it was taken on a cell phone. And don't get me wrong, cell phones take amazing videos these days, but it's really, you just get that authenticity that really just like drives the rawness conversion. Yeah, exactly. And there's the trust factor. You just trust that more. Like,
yeah, that makes sense. Any advice for DTC brand owners? At the, most of our listeners are probably in the process of scaling their brands. Typically going to be at the range of like 7-8 figures, trying to reach the stage of what Take Care Off is at, potentially an acquisition. What's your personal advice?
Well, personal advice is really just start small. Like I think, depending on your team size, right, you could either do it yourself or assign someone on your team that's spending. Like we look at it like someone that spends too much time on social media, right? That person is probably the right fit for you and on your team. If you have that person, what I recommend is just have them look at like, okay, who's engaging with our content? And then look at those people's content and then, okay, are they creating good content? And if they are, why not like have them create content for us, right? And then beyond that, if they're customers, you can even have them do testimonials, right? And just think about it as like, we think about it as a way to take a creative load off your marketing team. That's really the way that this should be seen. And then after that, if sales is your objective, then create a process around that. But I think step one would be really like create good content and use that in your ads. And if you've got clients, have them create testimonial videos and some of them. And one thing I can't stress enough is don't expect all content to be good. Like this is a numbers game. You're going to get content that you're just going to say like, okay, this is not even worth us giving feedback. Like post this and that's okay. And like, some content you're going to get, you go, whoa, like what is this? Right? Like what is this content? And that's really what you're seeking. Like you're seeking those. And then these creators that are creating whoa content, well, rework with them, have them create different content, have them share ideas, right? You can add like how you would interact with your team. And people just love to be part of like the brand. And you can ask them like, hey, do you have any, like if you were marketing director at my brand, like what would be that you'd be creating? And then look at their ideas, get those ideas from them. And then like, because we get so dry on ideas inside our own marketing teams because we're always in front of the same thing every day. And it's just like getting outside,
Yeah.
ideas is like, wow, that is brilliant. And it's like, and you can just like get them to spark ideas and take it from there. Yeah.
That is so cool. Do you ever create a community of just brand ambassadors? What does that look like? A Facebook group? Black
So
Discord?
right now we're not like running in terms of community. It's definitely like it's definitely on our kind of like service offering line. It's like, okay, how do we create a community out of this?
Yeah.
Like our ambassadors, like we with some baseline that we follow when we go on the more ambassador route is we give our crowd a name. Like you have to give them like call them like give them a name, right? Like hey,
The tribe.
squad,
Yeah.
cam, whatever. Give them a name. Make it like they're insiders, and then we use email, so make them feel like they get early access to stuff, they get free product, right? And that's how we do it. But there's definitely another level that we're looking into, right? It's definitely in our R&D right now. Is like, okay, well, how do we create a community around like a specific brand? And the question is tricky because the brand has to be badass. Like it has to be a badass brand where people really care about it. And it becomes hard to create like a hardcore community around a brand. But if you do it, man, is it powerful. So definitely in R&D, creating groups, getting people to engage. But then you need a community manager and they need to understand a brand from A to Z, the way to communicate and so forth. So definitely challenging, but definitely doable.
But exciting. I definitely see a ton of potential in it. I've seen brands like, I've had Obvi, Ron from Obvi, pretty young brand, but they do some crazy numbers, grew super quickly. And he attributes a huge amount of, like a huge portion of his growth to his community of just their customers, just purely just customers on Facebook.
It's crazy,
they got like
right?
40,000 members on the Facebook group. They're giving them insights, feedback on what to produce next, what's the next product line to come up with, instant feedback, and you get your brand evangelists, people who are most excited about buying from you again in that crew. So
that's what we're seeing is like, okay, well, if we're gonna like it, when we roll out this service, like we need an angle, right? You need to have like some kind of sense of belonging from the people that are going to be participating like inside the community. So it's like, if your product is vegan or like, you're in the gardening niche, like super easy, right? People are so intense about like their identity in these niches, right? It becomes harder with like a cell phone accessory, right? Where it's like, okay, well, how do you create a community around a cell phone accessory? And don't get me wrong, I'm pretty sure there's a way to fit it. Like we just need to like, and to find it, right? But I think like if you're working in the gardening, for instance, it's just easy. People are hobbyists and they care. Woodworking. Think about these niches. People are so deeply ingrained in them. Cycling, right? Like it's crazy.
Yeah. There's so much passion in it. David, what's the best way for people to contact you? And if they're interested in working with your agency, what should they do?
Sure. So you can go over at inbeat.agency, book a call right there. There's a book a call button, Calendly right there. You can book a call, or you can reach out to me at david@inbeat.agency. And, I'm here to answer any questions or, feel free to reach out.
Perfect. David@inbeat.agency. That's a great URL. We end ours as .agency as well.
I saw that. Yeah, exactly. I saw that.
Actually funny, the reason for that was actually that was the cheapest available URL when we first started our business. So we went with that, but it worked out.
It works out perfectly fine. We have inbeat.co, which is a software component that, agencies use to find tons of influencers, and that we're like, okay, well, we'll call our service arm inbeat.agency. And that's really how we picked it.
Nice. That worked out. Perfect.
Yeah.
And as usual, links will be in the show notes. You can go to chronos.agency/podcast to look at our latest episodes, or you can subscribe to any of the podcast platforms, Apple Podcast, Spotify, anything. We got it. Subscribe, comment on what you'd like to see next, and speak with you guys on the next one. David, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you, Josh. It was a pleasure.
Thanks for listening to the E-commerce Profits Podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get notified of future episodes.